Welcome back to another one-on-one with Jerry Hall. Today's conversation is with podcaster deluxe, Mr. Peter McCormack from What Bitcoin Did. We have a really interesting conversation. Peter is an incredible guy, has a great focus on bringing his journey of financial literacy to others by bringing on more knowledgeable, educated people to his podcast and sharing how and why they do what they do. So we're very similar in that way. Peter and I have a tremendous amount in common, and you'll see that in this particular conversation. But there's a point where the conversation diverges. Peter is a huge Bitcoin bull, almost to the point of maximalism. And you all know that I'm coin agnostic. I look at projects for their in particular pros, cons, use cases. Do they solve a problem? And we have a very interesting conversation about why would anybody do or use any other asset other than Bitcoin. Stay tuned. That conversation's coming at you right now. So Peter, man, I'm so grateful that you were able to take some time to chat with me today, because you are one of these folks that I came across early in my cryptocurrency journey and thought to myself, this guy's doing it right. We both share a desire for financial literacy and, of course, the path of learning that takes us on. But also you were doing things like, for instance, your documentary on your trip through Latin America and specifically around Venezuela, I found extremely compelling. And then obviously your ongoing series with What Did Bitcoin Do is bringing people, other influencers, and having real thoughtful, insightful discussions. And so, not getting into specifically Bitcoin, walk me through where and how you decided that it was really important for you to become financially literate.
Yeah. I don't think I'll give you a funny answer to this. I don't think I went on a journey to where I thought I have to become financially literate. I think it just happened to me because of Bitcoin. Like financially, I'm a moron. I've always earned good money, and prior to Bitcoin, I didn't have particularly good savings. I'm just somebody who earns what he spends. I remember once we got a company I was involved with. There was like a design agency that got sold. I got £125,000 out of that. So you would have thought, after paying your tax, I got 100,000. You would have said, good thing to do would be to invest some, save some, and whatever. I basically put. I went on holiday. So I took my girlfriend. We went to Thailand. We bought a new house, but we only used 40,000 of the money for the deposit of the house, and then I spent the rest on a Porsche. And I've always lived like that. Whatever I've earned, I've spent. I've always enjoyed my life. Yeah, we've always had a good life, but I've never had savings. And there's always been this impending doom that I might get to 55, 60, 65, want to retire and not have anything. I've got no pension. Well, I've got a very small pension that's not livable on. So what happened was I discovered Bitcoin. And again, when I discovered Bitcoin, it wasn't this is a way to become more financially responsible. I just discovered it, started trading some altcoins, and made a bit of money. And then what ended up happening is I started the podcast, and in doing the podcast, I just get to speak to all the smartest guys in Bitcoin, really smart motherfuckers. And sorry, can I swear?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's really smart guys. And anyway, so what ends up happening is you start learning from them. And I'm not an economics guy, but there's little things, little messages that land, little tiny things, like really discovering what inflation meant. Where previously I thought inflation was a sign of a growing economy, and as long as you were, as long as you were getting an interest rate better than the inflation rate, then you were growing. And now I realize, actually, no, inflation is just a tax. It's just a hidden tax. It's okay, that's not cool. And then I started I don't know, something to do with Bitcoin. I didn't ever want to sell my Bitcoin. And this was This started about a year and a half ago. I was like, realized, crap, I don't want to sell my Bitcoin. Actually, I want to hold on to stuff. Actually, I want to build up wealth. So really, it was something that happened to me rather than something I went out and searched for.
Well, obviously, there's been an inflection point and a realization was made, and then a concerted effort down a path of learning, because you obviously are self-aware, and you are aware now that you can be more wealthy by learning more things, right? Like understanding the system better by avoiding this and getting into that, because now you know what inflation means. You know, that's how you and I, our stories are so similar. My whole life, money came to me so easily. It was silly. I mean, I'd have friends that, man, I can't get a job. I can't do this. I can't do that. I talked to somebody for 5 minutes, I'm building them a deck. I talked to somebody for 3 minutes, I'm painting their house. You know, I was always able to make money. And then I built a business, and that business made money. Basically built off my time, though, and my energy. And it wasn't until I invested into digital assets and realized what I know about money couldn't scratch the surface of what I need to understand just to be able to understand these assets that I've invested in, right? And so that's been my journey. And so when I listen to you, I think to myself, thank goodness there's another person out there saying, hey, there's an awareness that comes from this. Let's share it. Let's keep talking about it. And even if we disagree on something, we can do it in a adult kind of manner. And that I really appreciate about you. And I don't know if anybody's given you those kudos today. And if they haven't, allow me to be the first.
Yeah. No, most of them just call me a moron and tell me to shut up. Yeah, just look, it's these we all come into this kind of Bitcoin journey in different ways. It's just a funny thing. And yeah, some people find Bitcoin because like they understand money and they understand economics. And some people, you know, discover Bitcoin and then they go the other way, like I was. Then they start to understand it. Mine's been the other way, and I think that's cool. And I think that's been the same for a lot of people.
Well, and that's been my journey. And one, like for instance, I can so distinctly remember this was when I found out or drew the correlation between inflation and the war on my savings, because I never was a big saver, but I always tried to have a couple of months of cash sitting in the savings account in case something crazy went on. Understanding purchasing power, understanding how inflation eats at the dollars that I already have. I mean, it's okay about the stuff that's coming in right now, but it's that stuff that I've saved is what really takes the hit, right? Never thought about that. I never, ever thought about that in 40 years of life. And here we are, all of a sudden going, it's like a Pandora's box opened. And it was like, oh, okay, all right. This is what happened. So I was curious, what have been some of the guests and or books or video series that you've come along on this journey that you went, oh, if I met myself 2-3 years ago, I'd say, hey, check this out, because it's going to help. It's really going to help give you a foundation for where this is really going.
Yeah, I understand. Parker Lewis from Unchained Capital, when I spoke to him about what money is, that was such an important conversation because I'd never really thought about what money is. I don't think a lot of people do. It's just like it's either paper and coins or a card and we spend it. And it's just this thing that happens, especially I think if you live in a country like the US or the UK or a Western country, I think in some ways we've been lucky because our stables are fairly currency is fairly stable, that the debasement is so slow and insidious that you don't really notice like small amounts of inflation. A pint of beer goes up 10p or a pint of milk goes up a couple of pence. You don't really notice it. Whereas if you go to somewhere like Argentina, typical places, Lebanon right now, Turkey right now, any of these places where they're seeing huge inflation, they understand directly, instantly, the problems with money and the problems with inflation. So we've been quite lucky. So I've never really thought about money itself, what gives money value. what makes good money? I didn't even think it didn't even cross my mind that's something you should think about. And I did an interview with Parker Lewis I did a beginner's guide to Bitcoin series, and we talked about what money is and why it has value. And that was a real game changer for me. That made me think. I'd also say the first one I did with Vijay Boyapati, which was the bullish case for Bitcoin, based on his article, and that was a really important interview for me, because I just got a very, very, again, good understanding why Bitcoin's important. And then there's been two recently. I just interviewed Nick Bhatia, who's got a book coming out, I think it's in January, called Layered Money. Yeah, no, again, there was quite a deep conversation about why Bitcoin is the best form of money and what that actually means, which again made me really bullish, really, really bullish. And one more, I just interviewed Brandon Quittem as well about the fourth turning, about what potentially is going to be happening right now. And again, for me, all these things are conversing on this idea, shit, we need a good form of money, and two, it's probably going to happen anyway, and everything's going to go crazy, and we all need to protect ourselves. So many, honestly, Jerry. It's hard to pick one, but those four really stand out.
Those are all gems, and obviously can be found on the link to Peter's podcast in the description of this video. So, I'll tell you, so I consume a tremendous amount of content, and I have a very large circle of friends, some closer than others, but a large circle. And folks have been coming over to me more recently than before and saying, Jerry, what is this crypto stuff? What's really going on? Da 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 da. And I find myself directing them to other entities. Like, for instance, most of my friends who don't have financial literacy, I direct them right to Mike Maloney's little Hidden Secrets of Money, that little 8-part series he did. Because if they watch that, at least they'll get an understanding of the difference between fiat and what you talked about, hard money, right? Gold, crypto.
Right. I've not even heard of that. I'm going to write that down.
Oh, really? Oh, it's wonderful. It's Mike Maloney's The Hidden Secrets of Money. It is a wonderful introduction to, and simply put out through words and graphics and interviews, modern monetary policy, the truth of it, and the value in hard assets. Now, he's a gold guy, so most of the entire series is he's telling us about gold and silver. But he does have an episode about Bitcoin and blockchain in that 8-part series towards the end. And it's all the same principles. You know what I mean? So that so what I say is, I go, watch that 8-part series, and when you're done watching that 8-part series, if you want to dive into and talk about investment strategies in crypto, I'm more than happy to do that. But you need a base understanding of how the old system works, what the new system is, and how you can find yourself in that.
Jerry,
or it's just like a taxi, I don't want to be the guy when a friend calls, should I buy Bitcoin, Jerry? And I say, yes. And then he goes through a month or he goes through a week of like what we just had, screaming high, plateau, and then crash. Oh my God, what's going on? I'm not, you got to understand how things work before you start. And I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's outcome. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you, Jerry, are we talking Bitcoin or are we talking crypto?
Well, principles of hard money apply to any fixed asset crypto. Now, there can be liquidity issues, obviously Bitcoin having the most liquidity and Litecoin not, or what's another fixed asset? XRP not. But yeah, hard assets are hard assets. The principles of hard assets, principally stated.
Yeah, principles, but like, why would you hold Litecoin instead of Bitcoin?
I don't hold Litecoin.
Okay. What do you hold outside of Bitcoin?
A full disclaimer, here's my portfolio.
Yeah.
And I'll give it to you in weighted. So my heaviest weighting is XRP. Cardano and Bitcoin are exactly the same. Ethereum and a project called VeChain. That's my crypto portfolio.
Did you hold all that through the bear market?
Mhm.
So you must have crashed heavily on some of those.
Matter of fact, I can tell you that it was 2.5 years that my portfolio had a lower US dollar value than the US dollar capital that I put into it.
Right. So, but if you'd have held that all in Bitcoin, how would you be doing?
I'd be doing okay. But my my I'm not a one thing guy. You know what I mean?
Well, hold on. So let me think. Are you, if in terms of investment, there's two things: you can make money or lose money. Do you want to do both?
No.
Then you're a one thing guy in terms of that.
You're right. That's a
Yeah,
good way to
yeah,
put it.
yeah. I like. See, the thing is about these altcoins, I don't give a damn if people want to invest in them. What I would say to them is like, are you here to make money or not? And if you want to make money, do you want to risk or do you not low risk? Because trading these assets is hard, man, and a lot of people lost a lot of
Trading?
money.
Yeah, I'm not a trader. I do not trade.
But you are in some ways trading them if unless you are thinking like. So with Bitcoin, right? I think some of my Bitcoin I will never sell because I expect we'll get to a point where that might be the currency I use. I don't think any of the altcoins have a potential to do that. There's something I'm always going to want to sell, hopefully at a higher price. So I'm like, why play the game of trying to time a market that's hard to play? Just own the best possible asset there is, which is Bitcoin.
Well, I think everybody analyzes. Now, see, I came out the digital asset space with absolutely zero philosophical ideations. Okay, I had no ideologies whatsoever. But I got into the space and I started looking at these things. And obviously, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP were the top market cap coins at the time. 3 years later, they're still the top three market cap coins. And I looked into each and every one of them. Now, I looked into them and I realized very quickly that they're very different things. Bitcoin is very different than Ethereum. Ethereum is very different than XRP, and each one of them is very different than each other in whatever combination you want to put. And then I started thinking to myself, path to adoption, network effects, where do I see this going? And because of the fact that I was in the assets and doing things with the assets in the very beginning, it became very clear to me that Bitcoin was going to be a wonderful store of value. That was a narrative that was going around. I bought into the narrative. I juxtapositioned the narrative to my own personal experience and went, I can see this being digital gold. Okay, great. That means you don't transact in it. Okay, great. Ethereum, programmable money. Ooh, I like that idea, right? There's been times where I've entered many financial contracts, paid lawyers, paid intermediaries. It's no fun. There's friction and costs associated with it. I look at Ethereum, but then I started doing a little stuff and realized, even though it's currently a proof of work, and I would think all the incentives would come from the miners, I'm still paying network fees. I don't like that. I don't want to transact in something that I got to pay. And then I
Well, if
looked
you've
at
got no network
XRP.
fee, if you don't pay the miners, where does the security come from?
The miners, the security comes from the miners getting the rewards of minting the tokens through their practice.
Yeah,
Why
but
am I
over
paying a network fee on top of a PO, off of them collecting coins when they do proof of work?
yeah, but because of the emission, because of the block reward, like for example with Bitcoin, that halves every 4 years. If that isn't replaced by people paying transaction fees, miners aren't going to make enough money, and then you lose the security of the network.
No, I understand that, but we're not there yet. And
Yeah,
Ethereum doesn't have the same fixed supply as Bitcoin anyway, so it can
you have to
it can go on indefinitely. But who knows what's going to happen? I don't want to get too far in the weeds. I'm saying about what I learned when I got here.
yeah,
And
but do you know what? I would love Jerry for you to get to this and go. Do you know what? Because I went on the same journey, man. I had like every fucking coin there was, and I have made them like consistently and reliably the most amount of money consistently. I mean, get out of the bubble, by just holding Bitcoin. It was the best decision. I did it about 18 months ago. I got rid of all my other shit, just held Bitcoin, and then worked to stack more Bitcoin. And it's the best decision I ever made.
And I do not have an argument for that.
So why are you doing it?
I couldn't argue that if I wanted to. It would be illogical for me to argue that.
Well,
But I was just basically telling you where I was coming from with it. Like, I saw Bitcoin as a store of value. I saw Ethereum or a possible competitor in the future. Programmable money is a real thing. It's got a real, it could be pervasive everywhere. And then because I've used these assets, the speed and cost to use XRP to move this to that is unparalleled in this space, maybe with the exception of Stellar. But look, XRP has so much more liquidity, it just makes sense that it's XRP for me, because I'm looking at, you know, like I said, I have no philosophical ideology attached to anything. It's like, if this tool does this job better, I would want to use that tool. I'm a contractor. That's how my brain thinks. I'm not going to use a handsaw to build your house. Although that handsaw is really, really helpful if there's no electricity, and can be very useful over the next 150 years. You know what I mean?
I bet if we talk in a year, you'll go, fuck, Pete, should have done what you said.
Well, that could be, and I'm not at all opposed to being wrong. I'm an open-minded guy, but to the best of my research to date, I'm very happy with my portfolio and my allocations and the project I decided to put time and energy into. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. The wonderful thing is, like, I think you're like me. You've been wrong before, and you know you'll be wrong again. And the journey is the learning, right? Learning from it. Now, I can get where you were just coming from. Hey, Jerry, I think you're on a similar path to where I was a year and a half ago, and this is what I've learned in that year and a half. Well, I really appreciate that, and I'm grateful that you felt like you could say something to me that some might consider confrontational. I don't consider it confrontational, and I think if the roles were reversed, you wouldn't think it was confrontational of me to say, hey, Pete, I see this. Have you considered this? Or I did this. You may want to think about that, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, I've been down this altcoin thing. I did it, and I came out and I realized it's kind of all nonsense.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Let's dive into this, because I feel like I made the right call. What would be the counter argument to, let's say, XRP for payments? I think it is a elegant solution for bridging value from one thing to another.
Okay, so
tell me where I went wrong there.
I'll go in a different couple. Let's do it in a different couple. Okay, so what do you use Bitcoin for?
Store value.
Okay, so the whole time you are holding Bitcoin, you're using it. You're using it the whole time.
Well, actually, yeah, no, not the whole time. Only the last 7 months.
Okay,
the last 7 months, it's been sitting on a platform, earning me more Bitcoin in the form of interest. That's the only thing Bitcoin does.
Outside of that, even if you consider it a store of value, when you own it, you're using it, because the whole time you've got it, it's storing value. So that's use, right?
Right.
Right.
Correct.
So what I would say is, how often are you making payments with XRP?
3, 4, 5 times a month.
Really? What are you buying with XRP?
What do I buy with it?
Yeah. What are you
I generally don't buy. I'm not like buying milk with it.
What payments are you doing?
Graphic guy paid for all the graphics of my show with XRP. Zip, fast, done. XRP has been converted into fiat, which immediately, obviously, the vendor, my store guy down the street, when I'm buying eggs or what have you.
Yeah, but that's not using XRP for payment. That's just selling off to get the money to buy stuff.
And it's converting. It doesn't cost me anything to do it. If I did it with Bitcoin, I'd be paying a network fee. If I did it with Ethereum, I'd be paying a network fee.
Yeah, but when you use, yeah, okay, it depends on the, yeah, okay. So if you're therefore using it for payments, in between using it for payments, it's storing value for you.
Okay.
So because that's the point. It's like when you're not spending payments, it's holding amount of value for it when it goes up and down.
Sure.
Therefore, it is primarily also a store of value for you, even if you're doing payments.
Sure.
Okay. So then what I would say is, what's going to store value better, XRP or Bitcoin? I think we can empirically say it's Bitcoin. And therefore, when you want to do,
hang on, I think people could argue that based off of numbers, depending upon whatever time range you want to use.
okay, whenever you pick the longest possible time range, Bitcoin always wins. XRP will only win on short, specific time frames, but Bitcoin will on longer time frames will tend to work. Let's say the last year. Then if you've got to pay someone, if you say you've got to pay your graphics guy $1,000, yes, you might have to pay a $3 network fee. Yeah, might be annoying. I'm sure he'll accept Bitcoin. I'm sure he'll wait an hour for it to arrive.
That's another thing. The XRP is 3 seconds, bam, done.
You know, it doesn't matter. I mean, like when you're sending Bitcoin, I think it's worth waiting an hour knowing it's secure.
And here's the thing. I think there's room for your philosophy. I think there's room for my pragmatic approach. There's also the forward-looking stuff. Again, value is exchanged all over this world all the time. If anybody understands anything about delayed net settlement, which is what all the banks do, which is what all the clearinghouses do, every FX swap, every stock split swap, forward, it doesn't matter. Everything is on this delayed net settlement. Well, these digital assets, and XRP being the best of them for this particular purpose, is real-time gross settlement within 3 seconds. Done. That is a monster value in any environment. It doesn't matter if it's supply chain management, FX trading. It could be ubiquitous.
You can do that with Lightning. You can get instant.
See, I'm not saying you can't. I don't know how to do that. I don't have Lightning stuff.
Yeah, it's not hard.
Special Lightning thing.
You just need a Lightning wallet. It will take you like no time to set up. Because the great thing about that is, anytime you're holding something, it's storing value for you. So if Bitcoin's a better store of value, then you're better off holding it there because it stores your value. And if you want to make a payment, you want it instant, you can use the Lightning network, but you're still holding the value in Bitcoin.
And again, I don't know if I'm going to change my mind during this conversation. It's been 3 years. My investment thesis is built to what it is today. And
what a rough 3 years, man.
I'm not closed-minded at all.
Yeah, but that closed-minded, open-minded people thing, talk about that. It's not about being closed-minded, open-minded. It's being about rational, I think. It's like rational decision-making. But look, you do you. I've been on the same journey, right? And there was a time I was like making all the same arguments. And over time, I just realized in the end, I want to hold value in my portfolio to increase in value. And the only way I can make all coins work was short-term time frames if you time the market right. I believe that Bitcoin will still be here in 10 years, 20 years. That makes sense to me.
Well, I think there's been enough activity on Ethereum to say within a 5-7 year period, Ethereum will still be here. I think Bitcoin will be still here. And I honestly believe XRP will still be here. Those entities, I think, have solidified themselves in this marketplace. And when you start looking at orders of magnitude, right, you start factoring the order of magnitude in the equation. Because there will not be one ledger to rule them all. That, I guess I am kind of ideological. I honestly believe there will not be one ledger to rule them all. And with that premise, I've built my investment thesis. And that's why my assets, the 90% of my entire crypto portfolio is in the top 3, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP.
Bitcoin could swallow up, the gravity of Bitcoin could swallow up the entire financial system.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Well, so the way I think about it is if you divide 21 million by the amount of Bitcoin you own, that's your score. And if the world, if the gravity of Bitcoin swallows up the financial system, your score is going to improve. Ethereum isn't going to swallow up the financial system, and neither is XRP. So it's like, and which one's most likely to happen?
Well, I don't know about there is an argument to be made that XRP could have a tremendous market penetration because of its use case.
Yeah, but people talk about that. It's just not really being used that much.
Here's the thing, okay? The argument is there has from the date of its inception to the date that actual XRP got put into enterprise grade flows. From that September 2018 to now, it has grown. It continues to penetrate. Now, is it penetrating faster than Bitcoin? No, it isn't. And there are a lot of reasons why. There are headwinds that other assets are up against that Bitcoin isn't. You know,
it's not hard money. XRP isn't hard money. It's just like a fancy database. And the thing to think about is like, we're seeing now, if you go on Twitter, you're seeing Ray Dalio talking about appreciating Bitcoin now. Druckenmiller came out and did. JP Morgan said it's taking gold. Like, there is so much talk about Bitcoin. You're not going to see people come out and say, yeah, XRP. It's just not going to happen. Therefore, you're like, this is a once in a generation opportunity to massively secure your wealth. And everyone has a chance. And things like, what worries me about altcoins and things like XRP is people are being distracted into thinking they have the same opportunity, and it's that if they have a very good short-term time in the market, great, but there's no better opportunity than Bitcoin right now. And I think everything you hold in there, unless you time the market right and you get a market spike and you exit at the right time, I think you will regret it. Personally, I think
that you know what, I'm not going to discount that, because the truth is only a fool would discount that. But also on the same token, Peter, if you understand financial markets, which I believe over the last couple of years you've developed a much greater understanding of financial markets than you had coming into this space, you will see that reducing friction and speed and cost of transactions will matter.
Yeah, Lightning.
The most elegant solution for that, whatever that is, will garner that business, that market.
Yeah, Lightning.
I've placed a bet, you've placed a bet. I still want to drink a pint with you.
Yeah, but that's a good point. You've placed a bet. So you think XRP will outcompete the Lightning Network?
Absolutely.
I think you're wrong.
Well, I know enough about that. I'm not going to debate with you. I don't want to debate with you because that isn't what at all, but I am open to good, solid discourse. I'll tell you, I'm not basing my opinion because I heard some YouTuber read a Daily Hodl article. I'm 2.5 years in the space, 6 to 7 hours a day, reading papers, reading opinion pieces, reading analytics, reading white papers, seeing and listening, being on actual calls from publicly held companies on their conference calls, their shareholder calls, talking about what they're doing. Yes, the adoption with XRP has been slower than Bitcoin, and I knew that because they're in a regulated space that Bitcoin isn't in. And you have the headwinds that they didn't get the same good housekeeping seal of approval that Bitcoin and Ethereum got from the SEC. But look at all the action outside of the United States. Look at what's going on in Asia. Look at what's going on in Europe and these Latin American countries and even Africa as it pertains to companies coming on board and using this elegant technology to reduce the speed and cost of moving money around. That's undeniable. It's fact. It's not my opinion. You know what I mean? I mean, I look at evidence. I look at evidence. And
Yeah, I'm not convinced, man. I'm not convinced.
and that's okay. I'm not here to convince you. I'm just saying, you know what I
Yeah,
would do?
I'm here to convince you.
I know.
I'm here to convince you.
And you know what, dude? I tune into you because, well, I guess because I like you. You you resonate with me because I see so much of myself in you. When you tell your story, you're in a lot of ways, even though you speak with a funny accent and you talk about things that I've never heard of before, pence and pints and this and that and the other thing. You're telling you and I are the same guy. I mean, obviously, you're better looking. You've got more Bitcoin, larger following, all that stuff. But and more tattoos, even though I got a couple, but I don't quite got what you got going on. We're the same guy. But I think at the end of the day, we're both going to get where we wanted to get by doing what we're doing. I think we're both on the right track. You and I can debate the specifics around Bitcoin, or do I see Cardano, because of the way they've done it, taking a market share away from Ethereum because of their academic peer research approach, and how that will be accepted versus the clunky weird problems that Ethereum's had over the years. Who knows? That's all debatable stuff. I believe I made my decisions based on very sound financial research and an understanding of how the world works. You've done the same. Jerry and Peter are going to win. You know why? Because we're off zero. We're here. We're doing it, right? Every new dollar that comes into my thing, and I've stated this as public knowledge on my channel, for the last 7 months, every new dollar that's come into Jerry's world that didn't need to buy a tortilla of rice or beans, I'm in Costa Rica, went into Bitcoin. Every dollar that comes into my existing for the unforeseeable future is going into Bitcoin, because I see the market. That doesn't mean I'm going to sell my XRP. Doesn't mean I'm going to sell my Ethereum. That would be silly. I made my bet. No, it would be. It would be silly because I made my bets. And I'm leveraging all these things and acquiring more underlying assets just by lending people my assets. So I'm earning a passive income stream off my current assets that I can leverage for capital if I need to borrow, take a loan, what have you. I built this based off of what I've learned from guys like you. A lot of time on Real Vision. God, I spend a ton of time consuming all the Real Vision content, which, by the way, you did a wonderful interview on. I want to commend you. I thought that time you spent with Ash was brilliant. Great show.
I thought it was rubbish. I don't actually ever like being interviewed. I always think I prefer to be doing what you're doing, ask the questions.
Well, okay. The next 15 minutes, this is your show. Run it the way you'd like to.
Well, I just did that. I just questioned you on your altcoins and shit and gave you a hard time. No, you go, man. Your show. Come on.
No, it's a give and take. It's a give and take, Peter. Here's the thing. There are only, maybe 500 million of us on the planet that have exposure to the digital asset space in a world. Oh yeah, probably a lot less than that if you really break it down, huh?
Yeah.
A couple 100 million, maybe.
I would honestly, I don't know the number, but I'd guess under 50 million.
No, without, you mean, I'm talking with some exposure to digital assets. Yeah. I don't mean they bought any.
Well, I mean,
purchased any. Yeah. Exposure. My friend talked to me about Bitcoin yesterday. I didn't buy anything, but we had a conversation. That's exposure.
Sorry, when you say exposure, exposure to me means you own some.
Okay, how about this? Knowledge of. Only about 500 million people have ever heard of this stuff.
Who knows, man? I mean, I rarely meet someone these days and say Bitcoin and they don't know what it is. So I don't know. I think, I mean, if you've got 2 billion people on Facebook, I would have thought, who have heard of Bitcoin, I would have thought it's definitely over 1 billion. I would have thought.
Interesting. I have lower numbers than that. In other words, I see a very large addressable market out there.
I agree with that.
And there isn't a person on the planet who's above 18 years old that isn't being given the narrative that their government or their central bank is debasing their currency. That narrative of the printer going brr is pervasive. I talk to people that have zero financial literacy. They think their governments and central banks are printing more money than they should. They don't even know why that's a bad thing. They just go, I hear it and it's bad and I don't like it.
Everyone knows, dude. Everyone knows it's happening.
And so there is a case for these hard money assets. And in this case, for the rest of this conversation, we're going to call it Bitcoin. There's a case for that. Hey, let's segue because you amongst all the YouTubers that I follow, right? Bloggers, podcasters, whatever you want to call them, you put boots on the ground in Venezuela. Now, I've heard you talk about this. So share with me and the audience something that you haven't talked about when this topic comes up on every other program you've done. What are some of the things that maybe they were down there further on the list, but new stuff? If people follow Peter on a daily basis, it would be new to them.
Well, I tell you what, so we went to the border of Venezuela. So firstly, I went to Colombia. I went to the border with Venezuela. Cacatao, what was it? I can't remember that. Cacatao? I can't remember the border town. I'd have to look it up. And we went there, and when you went there, it was full of people just who'd come over from Venezuela who were just trying to earn money. But what's really interesting is when you go to the border, you see the flow of people coming out of Venezuela. And as they get into Colombia, it's just like market stalls selling basics. Anything from loo roll to biscuits to toiletries, things they cannot get inside Venezuela, and they're coming here and buying it. And just watching that was really intriguing, just how that played out. And so that was something that really stood out to me. What else? Inside Venezuela, when I landed at the airport, I might have talked about this, but this is their main airport. Like we have Heathrow in London.
I went to the Caracas.
Yeah, in Caracas. I went into the toilet. There's no soap to wash your hands, which is something you just. The reason it stood out, I could not think of an airport I've been to that didn't have that, and it wasn't like it hadn't been changed. They just don't have it. And like things like that really stood out to me. Really stood out. We went back to the hotel, ordered a bottle of beer. The bottle of beer was just half the size of a normal bottle of beers. You know, shrinkflation as they call it. Just things like that really stood out to me. That there's a country financially on its knees.
Absolutely. Now, is that where your journey in Latin America stopped? Was basically flying into Caracas, heading out to the Colombian border, and then back on a plane back to England?
No, I flew for that. So that journey was quite busy. So I went to Chile.
Okay.
So I went to Santiago, and then I went to Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Colombia, El Salvador, Austin, Texas.
Wow. So so you got a good kind of a rounded flavor of Latin America. See, I live here in Costa Rica. So
yeah, I've not been there yet. I want to go.
Well, when our Bitcoin gets to such a place that I buy my property and create my farm, I'm going to have some cabanas. One of them is yours for you and your family when you come to visit.
I will come visit. I want to go. Look, I love Latin America. I've been now twice. I've been for like different trips. Another trip I did Uruguay, Bolivia. Where did I go on that one? Uruguay, Bolivia, El Salvador. Went somewhere else on that trip as well. I really like El Salvador.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really like El Salvador.
The climates are phenomenal, especially like in the Central America countries like El Salvador. Anytime you get this kind of topography where there was a lot of volcanic activity, you get these incredible disparities in elevation from sea level to 12, 13, 14,000 feet. And so with that, you get all these different microclimates: cool, hot, humid, dry. I mean, I live in a place about 1,200 feet above sea level in this beautiful valley. So it's never too hot. It's never too humid. It's kind of like spring all the time, unless it's raining. And then it's like a rainy spring day. It's just incredible. But
I also find the people really interesting.
Gracious
Yeah,
people. You
passionate.
get away from the tourism, right? Like I'm sure
Yeah.
every time you were in a touristy area, you got exposed to the extortion and the hustlers trying to hustle you and buy this and come on. But then you get out of that and you see where the culture is and the people are. They're family oriented, they're gracious, they're kind to each other. And I think that comes from because these families grow up so close together, even if they don't like their brother is their brother, and they know they're going to be there their whole life. So I'm going to have to learn to get along, even if I disagree. And it just creates this culture of acceptance and graciousness. I love it here versus the climate or culture in the United States, that's for sure.
Where in the States are you from?
San Francisco, California.
See, look, I'm a fan of San Francisco, but that place has gone to. It's really,
I'm a fan of the city too, but there's this whole everybody in America. There is everybody is looking out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an element to when you get away from that and you see cultures like down here in Latin America where, yes, families are taking care of themselves, but they're also part of a larger thing called the community. And it's mostly because the communities, most of them are related.
Are you a 49ers fan?
I am.
See, that was the team I grew up supporting.
Well, we're about the same age. So you grew up in the Joe Montana era?
So what happened was American football. So back before we had cable TV, we used to have four channels: BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and Channel 4. And then Channel 4, when I was a kid, started showing American football. We used to get like an hour or two on a Sunday night, and it was right at the tail end of Joe Montana when I started. Literally, maybe his last couple of seasons. So mine was a little bit more Steve Young, Jerry Rice kind of time. And then obviously when that was brilliant, they were a great team then, and then like nothing for ages.
Yeah.
I did see him play in London when Kaepernick was quarterback.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we get the game in London, a few games every year in London.
I thought that was wonderful that they do that. Matter of fact, You guys actually had, I guess it's like not an expansion league, like a minor, or the NFL sponsored a takeoff of a professional football league in Europe.
Oh, was it? Yeah. No one really got into it. It didn't really work. Never really worked. Never really took off. They tried, but the games here, they are packed out. People love it.
Now, let me ask you this, because the different kind of football is what is your I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You want to talk about feverish fans. Like, I have friends down here that are Manchester United fans. I mean, it's, these guys live and breathe football, FUTBOL. Are you still a fan of that?
Massive Liverpool fan. We're actually playing in 1 minute. I'm a huge Liverpool fan.
Well, just guess what? In 1 minute, this show wraps up.
Boom! What a perfect time, Cherry. You're the great host, man. You know what
Isn't that one of the coolest things in the world? So, okay, Liverpool. You know what? Right on, man. I think that's excellent. Here, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna look at November 9th. I'm gonna write this down. Let's you and I get together December 9th next year, right? Mm-hmm. And for shits and giggles,
see who was right.
$10 worth of value. So $10 US worth of value, you obviously in Bitcoin. I think XRP will outperform Bitcoin over the next 12 months from right now. I think you're going to take the Bitcoin case, right?
Of course, man. Well, we'll do it based on the valuation of Bitcoin. If XRP is worth more Bitcoin, you win. If it's worth less Bitcoin, I win.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to do it in sats.
We'll do it in sats, man. We'll make it happen.
Sats, dude. I can speak sats and own XRP.
Fist bump.
Fist bump. Bam. Right on. Hey, folks, that was it. I hope you enjoyed this very unorthodox conversation between two guys that are on the same journey, doing things just a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, it's about what can we learn today to make us a better investor tomorrow and possibly even a better person. So thanks for tuning in. On behalf of Peter in England and myself here in Costa Rica, Pura Vida.